Over the past few days, I've been listening to several channeled messages from Shay Pila. I hope I said her name right. A reader I've followed for quite some time. If you've been with me for a while, you know that I'm someone who is deeply curious. I love exploring spirituality, consciousness, and the unseen. I also happen to be a nurse. Those two parts of me have never been in conflict. In fact, they've taught me that truth can often be approached from more than one direction. Some people understand life through science, others through faith, others through personal experience. I don't believe we always have to choose one over the other. Sometimes the most meaningful insights are the ones that can be appreciated from multiple perspectives. One particular reading stopped me in my tracks. Shay said, "A lot of people cannot hold space the way you do." Then she said something that I've been thinking about ever since. When people come into your aura, time stops. Now, if you're someone who believes in energy, you may hear that one way. If you're someone who doesn't, you might immediately dismiss it. But before either of us rushes to an explanation, I want to tell you what happened inside of me when I heard those words. I cried. Not because I suddenly believed something new, but because someone had finally put words to something I have experienced my entire life, but had never known how to describe. Recently, my boss told me that when patients or families have become upset, when they've asked for another nurse, or when relationships have broken down, she sends me. She smiled and simply said, "You just have a way with people." I've heard different versions of that throughout my life. People have told me, "I don't know why I just told you all of that." Or, "I've never shared this with anyone else before." Or simply, "Thank you for making me feel safe." For years, I assumed everyone experienced conversations this way. I thought I was simply listening. I thought I was just being kind. Then I heard her say something else that completely changed how I understood it. Shay said, "You don't fix people, you hold space until they can reconnect with themselves." That sentence settled into my heart because I realized that's exactly what I've been trying to do. Not only as a nurse, but as a friend, as a mother, as a teacher, and simply as another human being walking alongside people through difficult seasons. The phrase holding space has become popular over the years, but I don't think we always stop to ask what it really means. I don't believe holding space means rescuing people or carrying their pain. It doesn't mean having all the answers or knowing exactly what to say. To me, holding space means creating enough safety that another person can hear themselves again. Whether you describe that through spirituality or through psychology, something remarkable happens when another human being feels completely accepted without judgment. Their breathing slows, their shoulders soften, their thoughts become clearer. They stop performing. They stop defending. They begin telling the truth, not necessarily to you, but to themselves. As a nurse, I've seen this happen countless times. Families who entered a room angry would eventually begin talking instead of arguing. Patients who had refused care would suddenly begin sharing what they were actually afraid of. Nothing magical happened in the sense that I solved their problems. What changed was that they finally felt safe enough to put down their armor. Trauma research describes this through the nervous system. When people begin feeling safe, they regain access to the parts of the brain responsible for reflection, reasoning, and connection. We call it co-regulation. We call it emotional safety. We call it trauma-informed care. The reader described the very same experience with different language. She said, "You stop time for people." I don't think she meant that literally. I think she was describing something every one of us has experienced at least once in our lives. Have you ever sat with someone who was completely present with you? Someone who wasn't checking their phone, thinking about what they were going to say next, or trying to solve your problem. For just a few minutes, it felt like the rest of the world disappeared. Time didn't actually stop, but it certainly felt like it did. Presence has a way of doing that. Another part of the readings that deeply resonated with me was her discussion about voice. She said, "There's coding within your voice." Again, depending on your worldview, you may interpret that spiritually or metaphorically. Personally, I don't feel the need to choose. What I do know is that research consistently shows that people respond to much more than our words and that words are energy. In verbal de-escalation and trauma-informed care, we teach that others respond to tone, facial expression, body language, to the emotional state we bring into the room. People don't simply hear us, they feel us. Whether we call that energetic resonance or nervous system communication may depend on our language, but the lived experience isn't so different. Then came another message that surprised me. She said, "You're not delusional, you're creative." I laughed because that one felt deeply personal. I've spent much of my life imagining things that didn't yet exist. New ways of educating nurses, new approaches to mental health, community programs, historical storytelling, books, YouTube channels, ideas that seemed a little too big or a little too unconventional. Like many creative people, I've questioned myself more than once. Am I thinking too far outside the box? Am I dreaming too big? But what if imagination isn't something to apologize for? Every intention, every movement, every work of art, every breakthrough in history existed in someone's imagination before it became reality. Creativity has always required someone willing to imagine what others couldn't yet see. Whether you believe inspiration comes from the subconscious mind, from intuition, from God, or from something beyond our current understanding, perhaps the important thing is that we don't dismiss the gift simply because it doesn't fit neatly into familiar categories. As I reflected on these readings, I realized they weren't asking me to believe something new. They were inviting me to recognize something that had quietly been present all along. Maybe that's why they affected me so deeply. And perhaps that's the invitation I'd like to offer you. Think back over your own life. Has there ever been someone who made you feel completely seen? Someone who listened without rushing you? Someone who somehow made you feel calmer just by being there? You probably remember them years later. Not because they fixed your life, but because for a brief moment, they reminded you who you were beneath all the fear, grief, confusion, or self-doubt. If you've ever been that person for someone else, don't minimize it because it comes naturally to you. The gifts that feel ordinary to us are often extraordinary to others. One thing the reader said near the end has stayed with me more than anything else. She said, "Give yourself credit." I smiled because I realized how many people quietly carry this gift without ever recognizing it. They simply move through the world making people feel seen, heard, and safe, believing they're just being nice or just doing their job. I don't think it's just anything. I think it's a form of leadership. I think it's a form of service. I think it's a form of healing. Whether you call it holding space, trauma-informed care, emotional presence, co-regulation, compassion, or simply love, the world needs more of it. So if you've always been the person strangers open up to, if people somehow trust you with their stories, if you've ever wondered why difficult conversations seem to find you, maybe there's nothing unusual about you at all. Maybe you've simply been given the quiet gift of helping people remember themselves. And if that's true, please don't underestimate what that means. Someone's life may not have changed because you gave them the perfect answer. It may have changed because for a few precious moments, you made them feel safe enough to discover their own. Before you move on with your day, I want to invite you to do something. Think of one person who changed your life. Not because they had all the answers, not because they fixed your problems, but because of how you felt in their presence. Maybe they made you feel seen. Maybe they listened without judgment. Maybe they believed in you before you believed in yourself. Maybe they simply stayed when everyone else walked away. Now ask yourself another question. Have you ever been that person for someone else? My guess is you have. Maybe you never noticed because it came so naturally. Maybe you thought you were just listening, just caring, or just doing your job. But sometimes the things that feel most ordinary to us become extraordinary moments in someone else's life. Whether you understand that through spirituality, psychology, neuroscience, or simply the mystery of being human, I believe there is something profoundly sacred about making another person feel safe enough to remember who they are. If that's a gift you've been given, don't hide it, don't minimize it, and don't wait for someone else to tell you it's valuable. The world doesn't just need more people with answers. It needs more people with presence. Thank you for holding space for me today. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Tell me about someone who held space for you, or maybe a moment when you realized you had quietly been doing that for someone else. Now, close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. While doing so, imagine an energetic hug with the embrace surrounding your body and holding you snugly, pouring into you while holding you up just a little bit straighter. Until next time, keep showing up for yourself. You never know whose world becomes a little lighter simply because you walked into the room.